In the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories that they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live on, in, and above it. We're grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to take care of it. And we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and our actions. We commit to learn, to honor sacred places, to educate, and to take action towards real truth and reconciliation. Miigwech. Council, any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none, the first thing we get to do is honor one of our staff members who's been around for more than 5 years. Mr. Taylor, that's you. I don't know where is there a place you'd like us to do this?
If you go in the middle.
In the middle.
See
Into the bear pit we go. Apparently that little camera there's looking through that. It's sort of. But anyway, that's yours. You? Congratulations. Thanks very much. Oh, thank you very much for all the work you've done for us. Hopefully many more. Thank you. All right. Okay. Now, on our agenda, we also had Mr. Dowell, but apparently he's busy up in Majer at the moment, so we will congratulate him probably next time we gather. Or maybe next month or whatever, whenever it'll be. I'll leave it up to you, everyone, to organize that. And now on to deputations. And I see that Ms. Majer is here, or Staff Sergeant Majer, and I understand that your doctor has said you can't come to us. I didn't know we were that bad for your health, but we're going to pass it over to you.
Good morning, Your Worship, and councillors and visitors.
We're not hearing you, I'm afraid.
Oh. I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I don't know if it's your end or our end.
Your end.
Oh, it's us apparently. So one moment, please.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing.
I can't hear this. What is that?
Testing, testing.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Yes, fantastic. That's a good thing. Good morning. I'll start over. Good morning, Your Worship, and councillors, and anyone else who's listening. And yes, I wish I was there in person. I don't know how many people are familiar with cat bites, but my cat punctured a radial artery yesterday. So I still have the cat. Don't pick cats up when they're talking to other neighborhood cats. So yes, unfortunately, I have to stay within the office this week, and while this heals the vein. So before I begin the OPP annual reports for the Township of Georgian Bay, he just slipped out. You may have seen a uniform member behind me, and that's Constable Chris Beatty. I felt that from our previous meeting back in December, it would probably be a good idea to have a member of our full-time Marine program. We had a number of questions that were posed to myself and Inspector Tatchell about the marine program. And I felt that perhaps having him here, any questions that you may have, and if he doesn't have the responses now, perhaps we can get like a document sent and he can respond, because they'll be going on the water soon. And I am also here in the absence of Inspector Tatchell, who is on training today. So when you're ready, Your Worship, I can begin with the annual report. Is there someone that can share the screen? Or I'm not sharing the screen, but can you bring that up for me, please?
One moment, please.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. I see it on my end. So we'll just go to the second page, please. There was one. There we go. Perfect. So I do have some comments that Inspector Tatchell wanted me to relay to everyone. And what's new, Your Worship, you were just recently on an interview panel last week for a permanent detachment commander. There was a competition process. So hopefully we'll find out in the next couple of weeks who our new Southern Georgian Bay detachment commander will be. Second point are technology updates. A lot of exciting enhancements happening in policing lately. Recently, we just had the in-car camera and automatic license plate recognition software put in our vehicles. So this is, I'm going to say it's about 2 weeks old. This is province-wide. That's just been initiated. Digital notebooks will be coming out hopefully in the near future, which will be replacing the paper written ones. Many advantages of having it, our notes digitized and apply to our policing software. We are getting an upgraded public radio network that we're just going through training right now. That's also province-wide. And body-worn cameras, this is something that the OPP also will be initiating. Currently, it's being piloted in a couple of our regions, and we look forward to that additional tool that we can have for our frontline members. Challenges right now, recruitment. So recruitment, everyone is a recruiter. That includes the listening audience here. Police services across Canada right now are experiencing lower rates in applications being received. It's a fantastic job. We're really trying a number of recruiting drives. For instance, the latest Toronto auto show that took place. You may have seen it in media where we had a Chevrolet Corvette C8 decked out in OPP decals. That was a tremendous tool that was used to attract some attention and gets people talking, and hopefully maybe something in policing that they're looking for an occupation. That was just a 2-week. We do not have a Corvette. It was just a gift from GM to kind of assist us with a recruitment drive. As well, we have auxiliary positions available here at our detachment. If you know of anyone that would like to volunteer, it is a volunteer position. Auxiliary members are very valued in assisting us with everything from our local parades to food drives and doubling up with our frontline members. Currently, we have 3 of our frontline members that are on a rotational northern deployment program. So they go up to our northern communities, work, and then come down here for a little bit, and then they go back up. So this is something new that our detachment is experiencing, and this will be occurring in the next year. I'm going to say probably about a month ago that our members went up. And talking about our fleet is aging. A lot had to do with the pandemic outbreak affecting the production lines, and hoping that we'll get some new vehicles here soon. Any questions before we go to the next page? Okay, we can move on to the next page, please. So these statistics are related just to your township. As you can see, let's see, break and enter pretty much on point. There has been a slight increase in theft from motor vehicle, assault, mischief, alarms. So these are your false alarms that we do respond to even if we are called off in the process of attending. 911 calls, slight decrease, and impaired care and control, pretty much on point. An overall decrease, however, for calls for service to the township. And moving on to the next page, please. So these are the crime clearance rates for your township. These are fluid, so these are investigations that are happening, and it is something that it's constant education to our members that if they are investigating an incident and, for instance, they can clear the incident with someone that has been charged, that they have to go back to that incident and update this particular statistic. I'd like to see a bit of an improvement in the numbers. So with violent crime, you see 35%, property crime clearance of 12%. And drug crime, I'm going to beg to differ with nothing, because in the call for service billing report that I was reviewing, there's actually a charge for possession of cocaine and other controlled drug substances, and 3 counts for other drug-related offenses. And most of the time, these are just from traffic stops, or perhaps if we are going to be executing a warrant. Next page, please.
Can we interrupt with a couple of questions?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
So Jarvis.
Yeah, you noted your violent crime clearance rate is down significantly, certainly from 2018 and through last year. Is that a product of COVID, or can you give a reasoning for that?
I can't give you an exact reason. With it being down that low, and you're right, comparing it to something like 83%, this is again how members are clearing the call. So it's either attending a call, and if you have grounds to charge someone, the member has to go back into the occurrence and update that as showing it's cleared by a charge. Sometimes it can be cleared otherwise, or the person the complainant doesn't want to proceed with charges. So this is that education piece. We've had a lot of newer members that we've been linking in our supervisors to ensure when reports are being submitted that they look at the clearance to see, is it actually cleared in an otherwise, instead of leaving it looking like it's unsolved or continuing.
Yeah, okay.
But you're correct. That's my goal, is to have that number higher.
So as a follow-up to that, in the previous page, there's no indication on that chart with crime statistics of which of those items qualify as violent crime.
So in the call for service billing summary report, I'll just point what I've got here. It's with all the statistics listed there. You'll see that there actually is all the categories for violent crime under the criminal code is everything from sex assault, assault with a weapon, criminal harassment, uttering threats, just to list a few. So it is captured, but in that other document that was supplied.
Thank you. Councillor
And,
Cooper.
and the same goes for property crime violations. It's right below it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll proceed, please.
We got actually two more questions.
Okay, sorry, I can't see.
That's fair enough. Councillor Cooper.
Be very brief, and it's really on the same point, which was the violent crime statistic. I think what I heard you say was that the reporting in 2022 and 2021 isn't necessarily the same as the reporting by certain officers in 2018, 19, and 20. Is that correct? A, and B, it almost would appear that the numbers are lower now because it takes time for something to be cleared, so to speak. So I'm just curious if what the real cause is here for this much lower number. Thank you.
Again, so yes, you're correct on everything that you mentioned. And what I am reporting is that there needs to be an improvement in clearance rates. Again, not looking through every single call for service that we have. That's why it comes back again to the supervisor who is approving these reports to ensure that everything has been investigated properly and that it has the correct classification code to show that it has been cleared properly. So I look forward to seeing how we progress this coming year, and my hope is to see a tremendous improvement with that since we've noted this.
And I'm afraid I'm going to have one more question before we let you go on, and that is, do these stats include A, the Marine unit portion, what happened in Georgian Bay, and B, items on the 400 versus, let me call it on the more township level roads?
Okay, so the Marine, any type of calls for service the Marine attends to, that will just be included with the detachment. It will not be shown as a separate entity. It is overall. And sorry, your second question was about the highway?
Well, you know, I'm curious as to, you know, like obviously the 400 runs through the township, and whether or not you separate activity on the 400 from activity off the 400.
Again, if, you know, there is a portion of the 400 that does go through the township. So, and I believe the inspector commented about how the calls for service is billed to the township, that the provincial highway is a separate entity than what's happening within the township and on the lands.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll let you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think our next slide is the crime clearance rates just for Southern Georgian Bay Detachment as a whole. So again, violent crime, there has been, and I know it had been mentioned about 2018, so there is a decrease from 4 years ago. So property crime, I just recently did a police service board meeting with Penetanguishene. The number actually was just a slightly higher at 18.8%. So I'll go back to my admin clerk who did calculate this just to ask her why there was a difference. This is what I was doing when I was reviewing the reports. And same with the drug clearance is 47.2%. Moving on to talk about the traffic component of the detachment is the collisions. So there are 2 fatals listed for Georgian Bay Township. I looked into that. Those were the 2 snowmobile fatalities that happened in January and February of 2022. So those were motorized snow vehicle fatalities. And in the blue line there that you'll see, that's property damage. And I know there will be another slide to talk about it, but essentially that is very much weather related in your area. I know we've had some pileups, etc. So that's any damage incurred to motor vehicles over $1,000. And personal injury, yes, there's only 5. So that's, I mean, no injuries. We always aim for no injuries, but that is very low compared to, like you see, for the property damage at 53. Moving on to the next slide, please, is an overall snapshot of the detachment. And like I mentioned, out of the fatalities, there's 7 all across the detachment. 2 of those were what I mentioned with the snowmobiles in Georgian Bay. I looked into that further. Outside of Georgian Bay Township, we had a fatality, sadly, in Penetanguishene related to speed. Oh, and by the way, the snowmobile vehicle collisions were involved. They're cleared off as speed, as too fast for the condition. In June, we had another fatality in Tiny Township. In July, 1 in Midland. It was related to medical. And then in August, we had one in Tay Township, and in September, another one in Tay Township for improper passing. And again, when you look at the personal injury, we're sitting at 61 and just over 600 for property damage altogether. And then the next slide, please. Thank you. So this.
I'm afraid we have a question.
Oh, that's okay.
Just clarification, the last slide, you were talking about collisions in southern Georgian Bay. So you were basically lumping together Tay Township, Tiny Township, Midland, Penetang, and the Township of Georgian Bay in this category?
Yes, sir, that's what I mentioned. This is the entire detachment area as a whole. If whoever's looking at the slides, can you go back one more, please? That one there is just for your township, sir.
I see. So basically, you're just giving us a snapshot of what's happening elsewhere. It's not really. This next slide is really goes across southern Georgian Bay. I don't even. Does that include all of the township of Georgian Bay then? Which isn't really southern Georgian Bay, it's eastern Georgian Bay.
Whatever area southern Georgian Bay Detachment polices, these are the statistics. So here with Georgian Bay Township, that's why I mentioned when you look at the fatals, those are the 2 snowmobile fatalities.
Okay.
Please go to the next slide. You will see at southern Georgian Bay as a total collisions. So out of that 7, those were 2 of the sled ones that I just mentioned. And then I recited the other townships who also had fatalities in their area.
Right, and this is not the marine part of it. This is simply on roads. Is that correct?
Well, if there was a collision on the waterway, like these are motorized, motor vehicle collisions. I know you're coming back to, are you looking at anything particular? Because this is talking about the marine side.
I'm just trying to understand what you're capturing in this particular slide, what area, what geographic area, and you're saying collisions, and I'm assuming, I think what you're saying, it includes all the marine data as well. I'm assuming that the marine data goes up as far as, I think you're at least up to 12 Mile Bay, if not to Perry Sound, and then Perry Sound takes over the marine portion and north. So I just want to make sure when we're talking about these statistics that we understand the geographic area that you're referring to.
The detachment area for southern Georgian Bay includes the former Baxter Township in our township, or sort of the southern third, if you will, and includes the waterfront up to 12 Mile Bay.
Up to 12 Mile Bay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's move on then, please, to the year in review. Okay, so this is in regards to, as you see, any type of violations, arrests, and hours involved. And in 2022, I'll just say the numbers speak for themselves. The one statistic that kind of pops out for me is the distracted driving. So this is anything to do with a motor vehicle operator who is, say, on their cellular device. We've noted a tremendous decrease in charges, and I believe that this has a lot to do with the new laws that were passed curbing usage, especially with the demerit points and the fine increase that were related to distracted driving. Can I move on to the next? Sorry, I can't see the gallery, so am I able to move on to the next slide?
We do have one question. Councillor Predko, please.
Just curious about the court hours. Obviously, this is something that you would like to have decreased, so you have people on the street, not in court. Do you know, is this a reporting difference, or is there really an appreciable 25-27% increase in time spent by your officers in court?
So I will say there's been an increase, and a lot has to do with the pandemic. So when the pandemic, and I know we're still in the pandemic, but when compared from 2021 to 2022, like our courthouse here in Midland was closed. People really were not out. A lot of people were working remotely at home. If you recall, children were getting educated online. So there is, not as many people offending during that time. So that is what I would say is a significant difference in the stats. Now that Ontario has reopened, and Ontario reopened everywhere, I'm going to say, what was it, last spring of 2022, you'll see that increase, right? Because I'd like to think that we're really back to normal as best as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's community engagement. So I'll just highlight some of the things. And for your awareness, this is for Southern Georgian Bay Detachment. So auxiliary events, our detachment, like I mentioned at the beginning, we're really trying to recruit auxiliaries to the program, especially at our detachment. So we were at our local high schools doing a bit of a recruitment drive. Community events, I even had participated in the North Simcoe Emergency Services Food and Toy Drive. Everything that we captured, and I know I mentioned it back in the December meeting that we had together, we accumulated a lot of monetary donations, toys, and food, and it all stayed within our detachment community. And this includes the Crema Cruiser that our detachment did with the high school students. Patrols, what's outlined there. So you've got what happened in the township of Georgian Bay, and then the entire detachment as a whole. Marine, this would be the 315 hours would be in your detachment, as well as snowmobile. And then the school events, we also had an inclusive ball hockey game and another ball hockey game that we were doing. There's been some change with the local school boards and how they would like to have police engage. They have some standard operating procedures now that they have to follow, and we're doing our best to partner with them and the students within their scope.
Mr. Cooper.
Quick
Okay,
question.
thanks. So, yep.
You can't see, I know, but community engagement, you talk about patrols and you talk about foot patrols, et cetera, and snowmobile. The Marine Patrol. This is once again an aggregation of all the hours in Southern Georgian Bay region. Is that correct? Not Township of Georgian Bay, under Marine.
So that one, and Constable Beatty's just walked in again, and he can talk about I know this came up in our last meeting about how many hours does Georgian Bay Township get. Again, our clerk did not specify, and I am going to say that the 315 hours is just for Georgian Bay Township. I know it is much higher as a detachment, but that would be what we have for your area.
Okay, so I think that's interesting to hear. So all the other stats we're looking at here, though, are sort of broken out for Southern Georgian Bay. And the only reason I point this out is that if you look at the population activity, waterfront activities, marine patrol, etc., you're talking about a very large area that's not really part of Georgian Bay, which would include Midland and Penetang and Tiny and Tay. So as long as this is just strictly related to Georgian Bay, I think it's helpful information. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think moving forward, and again, and forgive me because I've done a presentation for a number of the townships, but we have a new member who is new to the Ontario Provincial Police doing these reports. Her past experience was with Service Ontario. So there's always areas, like I go back to her and she's not here today, otherwise she'd be sitting in the meeting as well. But just to say, we need to make a better clarification for our listening audience to ensure that they know what's in their area and what is as a detachment as a whole. So we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is about our waterways that we police. So we do have a very large patrol area that we police on the waterways. There's about 1,200 square kilometers. Our detachment provides services with our marine program from about mid-April to October. So we're starting to get things together with our scheduling right now for this current year and preparing our vessels. Our dedicated unit is comprised of 11 marine trained officers, one of which is Constable Chris Beatty behind me. He is one of our full-time members and has been for many, many years. Very valued member, and he certainly has been instructing our newer members that come on as a part-time Marine member. And I thought we had five vessels. We have 5? It's got listed 4.
Yeah, 4 full-time.
Oh, 4 full-time vessels. And obviously with the Marine unit, they have a number of legislations that they can apply when out on the waterway, everything from the Criminal Code of Canada, the Canada Shipping Act, small vessels regulations, vessel operation restriction regulations, Trespass to Property Act, and the Liquor License Act. And the Southern Georgian Bay Marine Unit works closely with other specialized OPP units as well, such as the Canadian Coast Guard and provincial and federal wardens and other municipal partners. And last year, the Marine Unit responded to 182 calls for service. And that included 5 Marine operators that were charged with impaired operation and 6 that were served with worn range suspension. And that's because of the amount of alcohol that they had in their body. Any questions about that slide?
Councillor Jarvis, please.
I'm curious, in your Marine unit, I presume you do some Marine unit work on our inland lakes. Can you itemize or tell me to what extent you patrol on the water in the inland lakes?
I'm going to have Chris, here I am. I'm going to have Chris Beatty help you out with that, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, we are as high as we can go on our end, yeah.
Okay. Can you repeat the question, sir? Sorry.
Yeah, we have a number of inland lakes that are part of our municipality. Does your Marine unit, I know, does patrol some of them. Just curious to know which ones and how often.
So the one inland lake that I can refer to that we police quite frequently is the waters of 6 Mile Lake. And I believe that's part of your jurisdiction. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a vessel that's dedicated to that particular part of inland lake, and we are closely in contact with their cottage association as well for any concerns that arise on that lake throughout the marine season or prior to a marine season. And we try to address those issues as best we can, targeting the complaint-based time and problem that arises. Keep in mind, as the staff has already said, you guys, believe it or not, but you guys tend to get most of our attention. And the reason why you guys do is because our large body of patrol is Georgian Bay Township. It's Georgian Bay is our largest patrol area. The inland lakes don't get forgotten. They get addressed as well because we have specific boats that are assigned to those as well. Of course, it all depends on prioritization of our emergent calls. Sometimes I'm on the body of 6 Mile Lake. I'm on the waters policing for the day, but I might be the only vessel on patrol for that particular day. If something priority comes on Georgian Bay Township, I have to quickly exit that body of water and get onto Georgian Bay to respond to that priority call. So keep in mind that sometimes, even though I like to go and spend my day at a dedicated lake, inland waterway, I sometimes am pulled off to go handle a priority call on another body of water. Does that help?
Yeah, well, it doesn't help, but I understand it better.
Okay,
And
well,
so you're the sole operator then for the OPP vessels in Southern Georgian Bay Township. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's other operators. We have 11 on staff. We have
Yeah.
2 platoons. Chris and his partner are on one as full-time members during the marine season. And then we have another platoon of 2 other full-time members.
Okay, and but the other issue here is your hours of operation on the water, whether they're in the lakes or on the Georgian Bay itself, are limited, are they not, to just daytime hours?
no, sir. We adjust our schedule to best serve our policing commitments on the waters, and we are often beyond our daylight hours. Our schedules are modified. They are staggered start and finish times, and there are a lot of times where we're out beyond past our finish time due to the commitment or call volume or whatever happens that particular day or shift. We are available 24/7. Just because our 12-hour shift finishes doesn't mean that if a call comes in, we are not dispatched back out to address whatever type issue is on whatever type body of water, whether it be the inland lake, as you questioned earlier, or the waters of Georgian Bay.
Thank you.
No, Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Graziano, followed by Councillor Cooper. Oh, Councillor Graziano, followed by Councillor. All right, we're going down this road. So we got at least 3 more questions.
Good morning. Thanks for the presentation thus far. 2 questions very, very quickly. One, we have a floating container cottage issue on one of our inland lakes. And I'd like to understand the OPP's perspective on the legalities around this. And maybe this is too granular of a question. Second question is, in December's delegation, I had requested some data specifically on infractions that have been applied on the waterways, both inland and Georgian Bay. I understand that we're reviewing 2022, so perhaps the data wasn't compiled for 2022. I just want to confirm that for 2023, we will be capturing this data going forward again, so we can in future delegations understand the infractions that happen on our waterways, and what are high infractions, what are lower, less significant infractions, and so on. Thank you.
So here we slide over. So I recall that question, and yes, we are having our Marine unit meeting soon, and we'll see what we can do in articulating what type of infractions are happening just on the water. I think if I recall, you were just looking at the tickets, correct, sir?
Yeah, yes. So what infractions are occurring, whether speeding, drinking, what are the major issues that we're seeing on our inland lakes? Thank you. Okay,
so we'll do our best. And the reason why is the way it is captured with the system that we deal with, it's called ICON. we can't extrapolate, is that a word even, to pull the information out when it gets submitted into this program. This is a program that the courts deal with. It's a little bit archaic. It's been around for some time. But what we'll do is, and it's great that Chris is here with me today, is out of all of the townships, I find that Georgian Bay Township wants a little more involved in what is actually happening out there. So we will definitely review and see if we can come up with a process that we can talk to definitely as the year progresses.
Thank you. And on the second question pertaining to floating containers?
Yeah, that has come up on the Trent Severn waterway as well. I don't know if you're referring to that specific complaint. That information has been forwarded to Transport Canada, and they are in the midst. I was just online. I did a 4-hour online session with Transport Canada just the other day, and that particular slide came up in their presentation, and I would have to check back on that, but for what I recall, those floating cottages are deemed vessels. So that puts them in a new category as far as enforcement is concerned. So if Transport Canada is deeming them a vessel, then they have to be registered properly and have to have, all the specs that go along with a vessel on the water. They would have to adhere to all the lighting restrictions under the collision regulations. They would have to adhere to all the safety requirements on board the vessel. So it's basically getting the designation set in place. So if it's a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. So the hardest part at the start here was the fact that what are we determining this animal? Like so now that information's all good, and this happened all last year. And for this season coming forth for 2023, it's my understanding that they are now being classified as a vessel. They are so now we as an enforcement agency can treat them as a vessel. And now I know what governing case law and laws and statutes that I can enforce upon those floating cottages. Does that answer your question?
It does, and two things on that. First and foremost, great analogy, because I always use the duck analogy, so thank you for that. Second to that, I know that safety is a major concern for most of our constituents on the waterways, and given that this has been deemed as vessel, I'd like to make sure that they are adhering to the requirements based on Transport Canada's outlined specifications. So
That's right.
Sure that that's the case, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton, please. Okay, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, and I'm quack quack. I'm really into the duck expression too. But just briefly, I wanted to thank you for this particular report. I have two quick questions. One is, when you talk about Georgian Bay and patrolling, marine patrolling, you're talking about all of Georgian Bay area that you cover, not the township of Georgian Bay. Is that correct? In your statistics, in other words, you don't break it out between Tiny and Tay and Midland Harbor and Penetang Harbor and on I could go, Victoria Harbor, etc. You basically consider Georgian Bay one area when you're getting any statistics. Is that correct or not?
So I can add on that. When our members are out patrolling the waterways, or even if they're attending a call for service, through their daily activity report, they have to classify the location that they're in. So your location would show as Georgian Bay Township. Just like Tiny Township, if they were policing on a vessel out in the township of Tiny, then they will be ensuring that they're categorizing it as being in Tiny. That also includes, like I had mentioned on the slide, how many hours for patrol in your township happens. So when they're out on vessel patrol, that's how they're clearing it off in that specific jurisdiction code for us to capture. So it's we do it as a whole as Georgian Bay, but we're adding every township's criteria, like what's captured. And then, you know, if you want it to zone in just for Georgian Bay Township, I think I mentioned in the previous slide, it was just over 300 hours just on the water in Georgian Bay Township.
Well, thank you for that. And I guess what would be a very interesting little bit of extra information would be if there's I think you said 300 hours, how many hours total are there? So we can get a picture of how much time you're spending in the township of Georgian Bay. So that statistics would be statistic would be helpful. Let me spit that out.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I need to get your clarification on that. We're telling you for all the waterways in Georgian Bay Township, it's over 300 hours. So you're looking at,
what are your total hours? So I know what the 300 hours is part of. In other words, do you spend 1,200 hours in a season on the rest of all of Georgian Bay, and we are 300 hours in that portion or not?
okay, so I'm sorry, I thought I was explaining it. So can we go back to the previous slide? I believe it's on that one. Thank you. So sir, under patrols, you'll see marine 315.25 hours. That is just for your detachment area. This is, I think it was the mayor that was talking about that earlier.
Yes, but what I'm asking is, what are the total number of hours that you have in marine? You've given
Yeah, and that's when I said that I would need to be working with our clerk to capture that as a whole.
Thank you.
As Chris continues to talk, I have another detachment report for another area. I'm just going to see if possibly I have it there, but it is a lot more.
Okay, I just was curious what ratio, how much time we're using of yours. And the second question is, in terms of funding, do you bill Tiny, Tay, Midland, Penetang, Township of Georgian Bay for your services, or who pays for the marine services? I'm curious to know. Can you answer that question, or can you find out for me? Thank you.
I'll get back to you on that, sir.
Councillor Cooper. Sorry, Councillor Hazelton. You guys are messing me up here.
I know.
One of you over here that hasn't spoken.
Thank you. And I have a couple questions here. The first one relates to statistics, and I'm not asking for the answers today, but I'm really asking, are these statistics capable of being produced? So I would like to know at a Georgian Bay Township level, at a Southern Georgian Bay level, a Muskoka level, and an Ontario level, assuming you have access to those numbers. How many calls or service visits or whatever, and the dollars associated with it for the following categories: water access only properties, road access properties, trailer parks, and marinas?
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry, which councillor is speaking right now?
Councillor Hazelton.
Okay, so Councillor Hazelton, if I can ask, can you email me the precise questions that you have, and then I will have our analyst review and supply statistics to, I'll go through the CAO, or maybe your questions can go directly to the CAO, and then I can get that data and then respond back to the CAO to share.
Perfect. So my next question is related to a statement that I believe Chris made, which is you are available 24/7. And I have constituents who have called OPP at 11 o'clock at night, and they are in a water only access property, and they have been told that there is no service visits that will be made at that time in the dark to a water access property. Could you offer comment on that?
Can I just say something quickly? Sir, again, back in December, the inspector talked to you about that. I have my notes on that if I may to review.
Sure.
Okay, so the inspector, and I remember you were the one that asked that question, and he advised that we also have SOPs to follow when it's after dark. The only members that can go out in the dark have to be Marine trained. And Chris already alluded to the fact earlier when he was speaking that we do police 24/7. If it is a call out, that is something that the inspector at the time also said it's a situational type of call that it has to be analyzed by the on-duty sergeant to see if it is in fact something that can be followed up for daylight hours when the Marine unit is returned back the following day, or if it is something that's imperative and emergent, that we will call out these Marine trained members that can be out in the dark to respond. And would you agree with that, Chris? How it was? If there's anything to add, please do so. But the inspector did talk about that.
As previously spoken by the inspector and the staff, that is how we deploy our members after hours. We only work 12-hour shifts, but that doesn't mean we're not available past those hours. So when a priority call does come in, and it is water access only, and it is involving a call on one of the islands up in Georgian Bay Township, we have to analyze that call. We have to look at the call, and we have to, there's a lot involved with getting to that call. So everything is looked upon on a case-by-case basis on, there's lots to consider, like did a crew just finish their 12-hour shift? Are they capable of getting the vessel back out in the nighttime hours and navigate safely to that particular call, given the priority of the call? Or is it something where they need to call in another crew because that crew has exhausted their sea time and they have to call someone in and they have to go back out and recrew the boat to answer this call? These are all situations, circumstances that come into play. The nighttime, the NCO at the particular time the call comes in, basically has to sort of analyze this and make the best decision obviously for everybody, for the safety of the public, for the safety of the officers, because it takes a certain level of training and knowledge to operate a vessel safely during the nighttime hours on Georgian Bay Township. We have one of the toughest bodies of water to navigate through during the night. So a lot of contributing factors come into play: weather, time, priority of the call, what type of crew do we have, what type of vessels are ready, where is the call. These are very complex things that we deal with every time a call comes in and it's water access only. And trust me, there's a lot of thought that's put in that every time a call comes in. And it's just not an easy task, but it's something we take very seriously. And it's something that we deploy trained members on a regular basis to the high priority calls that we get. And it's about prioritizing. And again, taking all what I just said into consideration. The results kind of lay out differently, right? Depending on, again, we treat everything as in a case-by-case basis. There's not one call that's alike. There isn't. I hope that helps.
Well, first of all, I'm not disagreeing with anything you said. I'm certainly sensitive to what you said there. All I'm wanting to do here is the optics of a statement that was made earlier, which is we're available 24/7. I don't want our residents to ever hear that, because from what you've just said, there are likely going to be lots of circumstances where it doesn't make sense to send out, or it's not safe to send out an officer. And so our residents can't expect a 24/7 service. And I'm not saying this is a negative. I'm just wanting us to make sure that we're not advertising a 24/7 expectation when it's not achievable. That's really where I'm trying to head here.
And sir, if I can respond to that, we are the police. We are available 24/7. We would be connecting with that complainant if it's after hours and the Marine unit would not be heading out. They're still talking to a supervisor that is working 24/7. Our service is 24/7, 365. I understand the point you're making is that we don't have a vessel out on the water 24/7, but that doesn't mean that we would not be getting the notification and from a supervisor. Sometimes our supervisor also deals with our Provincial Operations Center. If we're unable to go, if we don't have the tools or say the staffing to do it, and as Chris alluded to again, our members have to be fit for duty. There is a directive that we have to all complete to ensure that we are fit for duty to go back out again. Our Provincial Operations Center, they deal with a lot of joint forces. Maybe this is something that we have to work with the Coast Guard with. I've had some experience up there where sometimes we're dealing with aviation services, sometimes with vessels, sometimes just anyone that might be available on the roadway, which would include our frontline members. It is it's an integrated call sometimes. I believe you brought up an incident back last summer out in Honey Harbor. That one, you recall that one, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Yes, and that was an integrated one that ended up becoming an SIU investigation as well, where we had our emergency response team even coming out. So this is the process that we have to follow. And as Chris also mentioned, and I'm glad he did, it's all about the public safety. It's following our mission, our vision, and our values. And not only that is that we always have to look at risk and liability as well, not only to the public, but also to our officers.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I think it's time for the final slide or two.
Okay, so we can move on. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
We can move on to motorized snow vehicles. So we are responsible for about 200 kilometers of groomed Ontario Federated Snowmobile Club trails. Also responding to any issues that we have on our frozen waterways as well. As mentioned, we've had some occurrences on 6 Mile Lake, including some fatalities. So again, coming back to the safety of the public and our officers, we have done the best we can in putting out in social media and broadcasting. And I know many of you know our media officer, Constable Dave Hobson, who is extremely passionate about messaging this, but no ice is safe ice, right? So we do our best. This season alone has not been tremendous just due to the weather. But in 2022, we did respond to 80 calls for service and just logged over 200 hours on motorized snow vehicles, and that would be for the entire detachment area. And the last slide. So the 2023-2025 detachment action plan. So there is an upcoming strategic plan that the organization should be broadcasting out soon. So any input that you'd like to supply, please email the CAO and they can forward it on to me. This action plan is something that as a detachment we look at. We look at what is kind of the hot button topics, how we're going to work with the community, internal and external partners in providing a safe community. Second point, the implementation of OPP detachment boards. I'm really looking forward to this. This is something that is coming hopefully, potentially in June. There should be a proclamation made, and the inspector believes that quite possibly we may be looking at late winter or early next year for the launch of this. People-centered leadership, Inspector Tatchell wanted to ensure that I mentioned about our progress in how we lead within our organization. All ranks are getting training through our Office of Professionalism, Respect, Inclusion, and Leadership as a result of the independent review panel, the Ombudsman report, and the mental health reviews, specifically regarding police suicides. It's taking care of our members and ensuring that we are leading with compassion and ensuring our workplace is welcoming and that our members are reaching their full potential. And I did talk already at the beginning about the new technological upgrades in our equipment. But I just wanted to add that our Chief Superintendent, Dwight Pierre, for Central Region has also outlined for the membership here in our region to focus on crime and traffic strategies, ensuring that they are meeting excellence in performance, our members, and in investigations, and ensuring that we are promoting safe road priorities. And that is all I have to report as towards the report. I do know that the calls for service billing summary report was also provided. I'm not sure if anybody needs to have me review that, but essentially everything that's in the statistics was provided in this annual report that I presented.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I don't know if anyone here has any final questions, but I want to say thank you. We greatly appreciate an hour of your time spent telling us about your operations of the past year and the bit of homework that we've given you.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. If I do, please, like, it's all part of working together. So through the CAO, any questions that you may have, it just assists. Like, I'll be honest, Chris is now left, but I came into work today and I said I would really appreciate him sitting in, because I do recall the amount of questions that came from our previous meeting, and I thought it would hold a lot of value having one of those seasoned members. He's got well over 20 years of experience, and he's been on the Georgian Bay water since he was a child. So when he talks about, and I will say this because I've been out in Georgian Bay at night, when he talks about that navigational skill, I'll tell you, there was some times where I'm like, I am so glad I'm with someone who knows how to navigate through the waterways, the weather. I remember it was pouring rain. There's a lot that our membership faces when they are out there and trying to get safely to where they need to be going. I am deeply proud of the team that we have. I've said it countless times that we're probably one of the top 3 Marine programs in the Ontario Provincial Police. And we are sought for the experience in everything from the boat show in Toronto to instruction at our academy as well, our provincial traffic operations. So I tip my hat off to them. They are fantastic, a fantastic bunch.
No, and I think all of us on council appreciate the challenges of navigating the waters around here, and certainly the prop repair shops know very well of the people who don't do it entirely successfully. But yes, we appreciate those challenges. But again, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to the next time we get together.
Sounds great, Your Worship. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Sure.
I was just going to ask if it's possible for our CAO, Mr. Mariotti, to make a request of the Bracebridge detachment to do a similar type report for us for the area that they cover for us in the township.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our item is the consent agenda. One of the longest consent agendas I've seen in quite some time. So I'm going to ask council if there are any particular items they'd like to discuss and or pull as for a separate motion. I'm also going to ask our operations manager, Mr. Sokash. I believe you wanted to add a few comments with regards to the last item, the operations work list. Am I correct?
Yes, your worship, that's
Well, then perhaps if you can make those comments and before I call the vote, so we don't have to pull it separately.
Sure, thank you. As you can see from the list, it's the work list for the next 3 months. It's fairly long. We have that list and then some other items, and we're probably about 100 tasks we're looking at getting done in the next 3 months. So it is at some level aspirational, but as well, most of it needs to get done. There's a lot of staff time in sweeping, getting the flower beds ready, the dock repairs. We expect is going to be a week or so. Cleaning up the ditch at Mrs. C's Park, getting the washroom and garbages all sorted out, cleaning up the cemetery. So although it does say it's best case scenario, we do expect to get most of the work done. There might be a few projects that'll get pushed off to the third quarter of this year. But all in all, that's what we expect to get done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Predko. Be it resolved, the council adopts the consent agenda of April 3rd, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. If only all our items went that quickly. Any open forum candidates? You've not mentioned anything to me to date? No, okay. So I have for the adoption of the regular agenda, I have be it resolved the council adopts regular agenda of April 3rd, 2023. And we have proposed an amendment 13F being added, namely protecting members of council from Councillor Graziano. Are there any other amendments that anybody would like? All right, we'll try the motion then. Moved by Councillor Hazelton, second by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved the council adopts the regular agenda of April 3rd, 2023 as amended to include item 13F, protecting members of council. All those in favor? And that is carried. And we're going to, I think what I'm going to do is do sort of the opposite of last month, more roughly the opposite of last month. Start with Councillor Cooper and just move all the way over and end with Councillor Bocek for any reports that you want to make.
Thank you, Mayor, and typically another busy month, but a lot of it is either interaction with our community. Happy to have that, and I can report that I've had discussions with the consultants that we're working with regarding the education center in Honey Harbor. I've been dealing with building a small group to give consideration to the issue of creating community plans. So I'm building a small little group that are very experienced in having built a community plan, and most of who either have legal or planning expertise. All the other activities related to either constituents or Township of Georgian Bay and District of Muskoka, ton of meetings, very interesting, but certainly it's turning into even more than a full-time job. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton, please.
I'd like to begin by thanking our clerk once again for restructuring the calendar so that we weren't having a council meeting during spring break, which gave me an opportunity to enjoy spring break in Florida as opposed to up here. That doesn't mean, though, that I don't check out, because lots of phone calls and emails are always flying around, regardless of where I am, which is probably a good thing. Other than that, we did have a couple of special council meetings and a library board meeting, and that's a wrap for me.
Thank you. Councilor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Another busy month as well, starting with, and not in chronological order, rather, Segbay Awards, attending the Segbay Awards with everyone, well, most of us here. I had a great conversation with what will likely become a cycling committee slash pedestrian committee. Hopefully looking forward to seeing that arise and you know, kind of be morphed into something greater. The committee is looking at ways of developing infrastructure and connecting trail systems in our township. Very excited about this and hoping that and looking forward to future conversations. Also met with MP Bradford to discuss, of course, floating cottages, my monthly GPCA meeting, and of course attended Majer Town Hall. And again, I want to say thank you to staff for such a fantastic event, including Councillor Predko. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Jarvis.
Library board, special council meetings, of course, Segbay, with recent Segbay meeting over at Brissett House. And I just want to add that the Segbay board is making every attempt to become more involved in the social activities that go on, not only just in this township, but elsewhere, since it encompasses a larger area. And if you go onto their calendar, you'll see that all our activities, for the most part, are listed, anything going on in the area. And they're taking a very, very keen look at investing more time and effort in the community, which is something I haven't seen from the previous boards of Segbay, which is nice to see. I know there are lots of issues, particularly with regards to Brissett House, but I know that they are keenly aware of all this and are making every attempt to work with the municipality in that regard. Other than that, I mean, library board is, I mean, it's always a rewarding experience when you have a CEO that is so enthusiastic about the region and the line and different branches that we have. And always a pleasure to have those meetings.
Thank you. Councilor Predko.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it was also a busy month and approaching at least a full-time job status. Did participate in training for planning training for new councillors with Councillor Graziano. There was on top of our budget meetings, strategic planning meetings. I met with representatives from OPG and the MNRF to talk about the Muskoka watershed and the spring freshet and how they manage the dams to ensure that our lakes don't flood if possible, and they maintain the water levels, especially in Go Home Lake and the outflows into Georgian Bay. As well, met with the Lions Club, the Severn Sound Environment Awards, as many of the other councillors did. And I guess the big piece that we had last week was the town hall meeting in Majer to meet with the people in the township, in the town, as well as a number of our staff participated and presented booths with information on enforcement and safety in finance and payments and communications and road operations and planning. So yeah, I think the town people all really appreciated the efforts that people put forth to come and be met in person, and look forward to following up with that with other meetings with probably like associations in the summer.
Thank you. Councilor Bochek.
Thank you. And a fairly busy month. I spent quite a bit of time in the district of Muskoka and visiting all the different townships within the district, meeting with many of the councillors so they can show me around their districts and introduce me to some of their fine facilities. Spent quite a bit of time touring District of Muskoka facilities, trying to get a good idea of what we have in the way of senior housing and hospital. Attended quite a bit of training here and at the district levels. Attended the town hall meeting in Majer this week, which was fantastic seeing everybody up there again. And also we met at Coldwater Arena and did the awards presentation a couple of weeks ago for the SSEA, and all in all, good month. Nice to be back.
Thank you. I almost feel like saying, well, no, I had a boring month, didn't do anything, but I'm not sure that that quite fits in here. No, back on March 8th, we had a Muskoka Area Indigenous Leadership Table meeting in this actual room here in our council chambers, which I had the pleasure of hosting with along with the crew here. And it was I think a very successful event. The Council Predko already mentioned the OPG and MNRF talking to us about the spring flooding control mechanisms and everything else, which was very interesting. Board of Health and yeah, the SSCA met here. We had a meeting with them, district strat plan. And as Councilor Graziano mentioned, a meeting with MP Valerie Bradford of Kitchener with regards to floating cottages. And I think there were some useful insights and suggestions from that meeting. I think it was well worthwhile. And thank you, Councilor Graziano, for that, and for making that arrangement. I wanted to mention that I attended the EPW, or the Engineering Public Works meeting at District last month, and I think we got a bit of traction from them district-wide, an appreciation of our roads situations in our township, especially 12 Mile Bay Road, and also the waste challenges. Attended with a number of you the Severn Sound Environmental Association Partners reception on the 24th. On the 28th, following the strat plan day that we had here, I went up to Perry Sound and the Georgian Bay Biosphere. I had a land acknowledgement training program that I was very pleased to hear from and prior to their board meeting. And absolutely enjoyed the Majer Town Hall, and a big thank you to all the staff did to support that, and I thought it was a great day. And had an interesting experience on Friday. I was in Midland, invited as a mayor in the region to interview potential, well, candidates for the next inspector or commander of the detachment, the OPP detachment, and to spend a day with a bunch of OPP officers and not be under arrest is an interesting experience. I learned a lot and appreciated that invitation. And with that, Sir CAO Greg Mariotti.
Thank you, Mayor Coetzee, and morning, Council. And like all of you, staff and myself have been very, very busy this month. We've had lots of emails from both ratepayers as well as individual members of council that we're trying to sift through on a daily basis. As you all know, budget took priority this past month, and very glad that we all had a successful outcome. Not only that, but I think as mentioned as well, strategic planning for the next term, which has kicked off. Looking forward to concluding that today, so that you know, staff can be given their work program certainly for the next coming year, and we have a clear path forward. Regarding recruitment for the Director of Planning position, that is taking some time. We don't want to rush this. Obviously, Georgian Bay Township is a unique township, and so we want to find that unique candidate. So I can share that our talent acquisition consultant has spent a lot of time not only talking with prospective candidates, but also talking internally with myself and with staff on fine-tuning the correct parameters for the role. So it's still taking some time. Lastly, staff have been involved in the latest amendments to the OREG 16117, more specifically related to floating accommodations. So I'm sure this topic will come up later on, but we're pleased with the progress that certainly the province is making, which will definitely help us, you know, down the road. And lastly, a big thank you to staff again for helping support the the town hall in Majer, and thank you council for noticing that. I think it was very successful on all fronts, and also staff did a great job at hosting the malt meeting earlier this month that Mekuti had mentioned. So all in all, a very busy March.
Thank you. And now on to the staff reports. And the first staff report, now that winter is hopefully over. We have a provision of sand for private roads, and Mr. Sokash, I believe you will be giving us that report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report's being brought forward because the township currently has a practice of supplying sand to 6 or 7 private roads. It's not a township-wide practice. It's a historical practice. We're not sure how it started. So we're so different roads are getting different levels of services. So we're looking for direction on how to deal with this going forward. There are about 106 private roads that intersect with a township or a district road. The township doesn't go on private roads, so the only place we'll drop sand is where they intersect with a township or a district road. So potentially there could be 106 spots that we would be dropping sand if this was to become a township-wide policy practice. In reality, not all the roads are maintained in the winter, and not all the road users would be requesting the sand. So we've given a range of estimated cost if 25%, 50, 75%, or 100% of the roads. We're asking for sand 4 to 6 times a year. And we have costs ranging from $13,000 to about $80,000, depending on how many roads we're asking for sand and how often we have to deliver it. A bigger concern we have is how we would provide that service. Right now, with the 6 or 7 roads that we're servicing, they usually give us a call when they need sand and we'll go and drop it off. If we have 30 or 40 different sandboxes that we need to service, getting on those calls and keeping track of them, getting them serviced in a timely manner is going to be quite difficult. We do provide sand for private use at both of the yards. There are small piles that are left for the public and signed for the public. We don't propose to discontinue that practice, but we are suggesting that expansion of the current practice would be difficult with the staffing we have. And in order to treat all road users equally, we're proposing that the delivery of sand be discontinued.
All right, thank you. I see Councilor Graziano, you already have your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Mr. Sokash, for the report. It's great to see that staff is keeping an eye out on our bottom line and trying to keep us in the black and not in the red or further in the red. Couple of questions if I can, and then I'll build on this if I may. Actually, one question specifically, and then I'll carry on my comments. Mr. Sokash, does the sand that we provide have a mixture of sand and salt together in the mix, or is it just strictly sand?
Through the mayor, it's about a 6% salt sand mixed. Salt is added to the sand when it's stacked in order to keep it from freezing in the winter, so that we don't have clumps that come out when we're filling the trucks or trying to distribute it on the roads.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you know if that premix is sold by aggregate lots, or would the road association or road person maintaining that particular road have to mix the two together to maintain that 6%?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Given that what we provide has a sand and salt mixture to it, would or does aggregate yards, are you aware that perhaps aggregate yards sell that premix, or do they have to purchase 2 different substances and mix them together, the salt and the sand together?
I can think of one place that I've seen it, but I haven't I don't know how widespread the practice is for the sale of sand.
And so now I'm going to endeavor to provide my comments if I may. Great report. I read it in detail and thank you very much for taking the time. I do want to direct a concern of mine to the report in that throughout the report, the word or words safe for safety were mentioned all of 0 times. And so I, in reviewing this, understand the report and understand where the report was going. But I did not see any consideration to safety and or any mention of safety in the report. And when I went and I endeavored to take a moment of my time yesterday to drive around each one of the roads that were identified here, and they seem to all be in my ward, which is great. I didn't have to travel too far. All of these roads have bona fide reasons for requesting the sand salt mixture. If we look at Quarryvale Road, they have 2 large hills and a strong right corner or curve. We look at Portage Road, they have a drastic drop or a hill as well. If we look at Trans-Canada Bay at Volux, they have 2 large hills along with a very strong hard right corner. As well as if we look at East Hungary Bay, that's actually in fact the causeway. And if a car were to, for whatever reason, coming down that hard hill, slip and they'll find themselves into the water, unfortunately, because you have water on both sides of that causeway. And then lastly, on Haskets, again, another large hill with a drastic slope that would likely require sanding throughout the course of the year. So when you factor in the safety concerns, and when we look at the bona fide reasons for these roads to have sand being distributed to them, perhaps we didn't have a policy that was developed previously, but perhaps the previous administration had the foresight to understand that there are going to be circumstances in which the township should try to support safe traveling, albeit on a private road. And hence the reason why they came up with the sand offering at where the junction of the private road and the municipal road meet. If I may make a suggestion to council today, or an amendment to this report, that we strongly consider a 4th option, and that option is to fund and maintain this service, but provide it back onto staff to identify whether or not there's a bona fide safety reason for providing that sand and not just distributing the sand to any street that doesn't require it. Thank you. Oh, and I do have pictures in the event that anyone would like to see them. I also took a very interesting picture of one of the boxes that said for private use only. Please do not use the sand as it's for the road. So, and I know there was some concerns about contractors, so it didn't say that it was for contractor use. Thank you.
Through the mayor, with respect to safety, the township doesn't maintain or inspect or have any jurisdiction over how those private roads are built or maintained. We don't look at the widths, whether they're safe. We don't look at the angles of the curves, whether they're safe. We don't deal with or install guardrails. So while I understand that the users of the roads want them to be safe, I think it's the road association's responsibility to ensure that they're safe, at least based on our current policies. With respect to inspecting and identifying where it's legitimate or not, I don't know what the criteria would be for that. And we don't typically go down private roads to start with. But is a 5% grade? Does that warrant sand? Does a 7% grade warrant sand? Does there being some water at a bottom of a hill warrant sand? It would be very subjective. So I think that would be difficult to do. But if that's council's direction, we will do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton.
Thank you, Brad, for the report. I have a couple questions about the triggering of this initiative. Were there some letters that have come in that have complained about what's been going on?
this is a practice that's been going on for predates me, so at least 8 years. And I would hear about it, but didn't really put a lot of thought to it. So there was a request recently, and that kind of triggered a discussion internally on how many of these could we service, and how much effort are we putting into it. And then we went searching for a policy, thinking that this practice must have started for some reason, and there must be a policy, but we couldn't find it. So based on those two things, we figure we better bring this forward as a policy before it potentially spirals.
So I have a frame of reference. Somebody once described it as if you're walking down the street and there's a guy lying on the ground and he needs CPR, you don't give CPR to everybody, you just give it to the guy that needs it. I'm kind of thinking that we got to this point in time where these roads probably need it. And I would be in favor of, unless it's broken, let's not fix it. If we need to write a policy that says we're going to do what we're doing, maybe we should do that. But I'm not a big fan of stopping something unless we're getting huge outcries as to why we're doing it there and not elsewhere. But anyways, that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Predko.
Thank you, Your Worship. One quick question for Mr. Sodenchek. Is it possible to have a fourth option, and that would be to no longer deliver the sand to the 6 private roads, but for a cost neutral fee, deliver sand on request to, potentially those 6 roads or somebody else, so that it would make it more fair for other private roads that were looking for sand to help maintain their slopes in the wintertime?
Through the mayor, am I understanding you're suggesting charging for it?
For the delivery of it.
Okay. I'm more concerned with the time and getting everything serviced than the cost. You guys are concerned about the cost. I'm sure I'm concerned about the time. If we have 6 or 7 roads, we're able to do it. If we get up to 15 or 20, we're going to start to struggle quite mightily. So if we wanted to if council wanted to put a policy together, we could. It would be great if we could keep it quiet and not advertise it, but I don't think that's realistic or reasonable. I guess the best I could suggest is give it a shot and report back in a year.
Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Bocheck, please, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I appreciate the proactive, preemptive approach to this. I think it's good to try and get on top of these things before they become more of a critical issue from a liability standpoint. And that's my concern, is liability. If there's a perception that we're providing something that is supposed to alleviate a safety issue, and then the safety issue becomes an issue, then are we liable because we were providing something that's supposed to be alleviating that, even though it's a private road? And I'm really not too keen on, I like the approach that operations has taken on this. I think that having the sand available for those who want to pick it up makes sense. So a road association can come over to one of our depots and pick up what they need in the way of sand and do their roads. Private road is just that, it's a private road. It's like your own driveway, in my mind. Of course, none of my constituents have this concern. So I am looking at it from a slightly different angle. But I think that we're doing the right thing here. By making the sand available is a good idea, but not providing it directly to the road associations makes sense to me. So I appreciate the report, and my thinking is in line with the recommendation. Thank you.
Through the mayor, that is a kind of a reasonable suggestion. Either having times when people can come and pick up sand, or they can make an appointment to come in and pick up some sand. Our insurance company is not thrilled about the practice of providing sand for private roads because something happens, everybody gets sued, and the more involvement we have, the worse. But I think a policy of having either times when people can pick it up or make an appointment, I tell you the truth, I kind of like that option. That seems like a good compromise. I wish I'd thought of it.
Thank you. Counselor Bocek, please.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Brad. And I, being one that plows, have plowed for the past 35 years, private roads in this township, I can see the reason for this. We provide plowing services and sanding services to about 40 roads. You say we have 100 private roads. I would suggest that 50% of those are probably closed, not plowed during the winter. So I agree with this. It puts the township in a liability position. And the private contractors that plow these roads, most of them have sanders in the back of them anyways, and provide a sanding service to these roads for a cost, which is a profit center for most of the independent contractors. So I'm not opposed to this at all. And I think that private roads are just that. They're private roads, and they should have private contractors making sure they're usable. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Cooper.
A bit of a conundrum, this one. I appreciate the report, Brad, and I can see it's not an easy one. Although there are just, I think, 6 roads, isn't it, that we're talking about here? And I sort of like the thought that if it ain't broken, why fix it? And I do understand the safety issue. I wonder if we asked you to come back to us with a report that said that we could provide sand for these 6 locations and any other road that was able to demonstrate merit. In other words, I'm hearing the roads that are receiving the sand, almost every one of them has a steep section. If it's a private road that doesn't have a safety issue, we simply say it doesn't merit us servicing it, but you're welcome to come and pick up some sand at our depot or something along those lines. So it's just a merit-based safety oriented way of looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to make a couple of comments on this myself. I do use a private road in the winter. I don't believe that's a conflict of interest because A, it's not getting any sand, and B, I'm not about to say it should. But I found your stats, Mr. Sokach, very interesting because you suggested there's 165 private roads. But then you also suggested that the total length in private roads is 118 kilometers. And I'm thinking, does that mean that the average private road is 3/4 of a kilometer? And knowing that we have some private roads that are fairly lengthy, it gets to the point that many of these private roads are, as I think Councillor Jarvis put it, driveways. And I'm not sure, personally, I would not expect somebody to, the township, the municipality to provide sand for my driveway. And that's sort of my attitude towards private roads, is that they were being put in by folks to have driveways to their cottage, their home. Sometimes at great expense, sometimes at great length, and sometimes obviously much less. And I don't expect, and would not expect the township to put sand at the start of the private lane that I use. It's probably a little over 2 kilometers in length. In the summer serves 24 people, in the winter serves half a dozen. I don't, because that to me, it's a private road. And so I think that, to me, while I hear the the suggestion, if it's not broke, don't fix it and that sort of thing. I also respect the liability side of things. And, obviously that's why we get the caution from the insurance companies. What's going to happen on one of those private roads if that steep hill isn't sanded that day? And somebody tries to blame the township because they said the sandbox was empty. And, obviously we cannot take any responsibility for the placement of the sand on that steep hill, but I find myself, I'm concerned about the township exposure. And I would suggest that if we were to consider any form of status quo, that we would want to have a full legal indemnity signed by the road association or all members, all residents, on behalf of them and their guests and their trespassers, that the township in no way would be held liable. And to me, that would be the only way I would consider it. But I'd also think that if we were going to do that, we'd also have a minimum, I'll call it criteria, such as this sand is on a road that's serving, 10 homes in the winter, or 15 or 30, or what I don't know what the number would be, because as I say, I'd hate to see this expanded, that we are now providing it to 50 private roads in the winter, some of which serve one resident. And so that's my thoughts, that if we are going to in any way continue, I think we have to have additional criteria in our policy. My thoughts. Round two, Councillor Graziani, you want to lead that off?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and brilliantly said. And I actually had that as big asterisks and double line underlined. I think the issue here can be very easily remedied, or the concern with regards to liability can be very easily remedied by way of an indemnity clause. Based on what staff could work, I could easily see something along the lines of an applicant having to come into the office, apply, have their application reviewed for the sand, and then if granted through an objective means, or maybe there is some level of subjectivity to the decision on whether or not there's a bona fide requirement involved, that they sign off on the indemnity clause, which outlines that we as a township are not liable for anything that happens on their roads. Rather, that is just being provided to them as a service to help them address perhaps a topographical and or a landscape issue. I understand that we have no obligation to provide safe passage on private roads, but I think it's a goodwill of our township, given the limited amount of services that our constituents receive for the tax that they do receive, that they do have an opportunity to receive some reprieve during the winter times around this. And I want to put things into perspective again, because I went out to each and individual road. These boxes are not big boxes. These boxes are not going to sand their whole road, the whole 3/4 of a kilometer, as our mayor had identified here. Rather, they're small, and they're likely there only to sand the portion that becomes a bit of a hazard. And I want to put that into perspective. These boxes are very small. They're not filling up buckets on the back of tractors. They're not filling up massive, bare bin size bins. They're small, 10 cubic feet, roughly on average, sand bins. And so in the end, again, I think we can request an indemnity clause. Staff can develop a bona fide requirements list as to what is identified and what people can or who can apply for it. And lastly, I think it's a service that we can still continue to offer, but be selective in how we offer it and be responsible in how we offer it. I'm going to request that the vote be recorded. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper?
Thank you. Just building on some of the things that have been said, I thought very good comments. And I would just add to this, a couple of things. One is I'm not sure. I think the best thing today would be to maybe have a report come back with some of the suggestions versus voting for or against 6 roads. But also, I think we need to get more information with respect to some sort of agreement that does get signed by the operators or of these 6 owners of these 6 roads. And that also as part of that indemnification, I don't see any reason why beside the sandbox, there couldn't be a sign saying, use this road at your own risk. This is a private road. I don't know whether that helps us, but often use it at your own risk can help. You could even say there's something to the effect, not the responsibility of the Township of Georgian Bay. So there are things that we might be able to do legally to avoid any further action against the township. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, try not to repeat myself. I think we've heard that there are services available, as Councillor Bochek has indicated, where people can get contract out road clearing, sanding as they deem necessary. These roads, again, I see this in more of a black and white light here. It's just, a private road is a private road. They've got to deal with it as they see fit. And if they need work done on that road, whether it's grading or obstacle removal or railing or sanding or whatever, they've got to find somebody to do the job, and the road association pays for it. I think that's pretty clear. I don't see it any other way. I think that within the resolution that's been proposed today, sand at public works available for private use and for property owners is something that's within there already. So the sand is available. All you need to do is go pick it up and use it where you deem necessary. I think that's perfect. I don't see why we have to be providing something on a private road. It's like having, I live in Collingwood. I have dozens of friends who contract out the plowing on their significantly long driveways in the wintertime. They don't ask the municipality to plow out their long driveways. To me, it's basically the same thing. I appreciate the recommendation, and yeah, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Predco.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think I'm on a similar train of thought. Mr. Sochek, so I know Councillor Jarvis a moment ago kind of suggested, being able to pick up from the township office and the storage shed. And, would it be, and we've also had suggestions that we'd have an indemnification document that somebody would sign, with regards to sand being used on their site. And we also know that there are private contractors that do the plowing on these private roads. It's not something that's typically taken care of by the residents themselves. Could we somehow just have in that, if a private road signs up for sand, their contractor can be allowed to pick up the sand and bring it over? Or is that just opening up a different Pandora's box again?
Through the mayor, having the contractors pick up the sand, I think would result in a lot of sand getting used.
Well, so I think if they were only signed up just to pick it up for a particular road association.
Yeah, I've been thinking this through as different councillors have been speaking. I think we would have to have some sort of a formalized policy where an association has to sign up, designate someone or to pick it up and limit the amount of sand that can be taken or something along those lines.
Okay.
But I don't think a blanket come and get it would be a very
No,
good idea.
and I'm not suggesting that either. I'm saying, a designated person for a designated road. But having said that, I think, we would merit deferring this item today, so you have more time to think about what other options. I think given the time of year that you've brought this forward, we have a few months to give it consideration.
Councillor Bochek, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm an advocate of not providing sand to the private roads. These roads are exactly that. They're owned They're owned by the cottage owners, the roads are. And where do you draw the line? You know, are you gonna start ditching them? Are you gonna start cutting the weeds back from the side of them? Like we do on municipal roads? I think we need to be aware that we have a fairly significant population that live on private roads, and if we can help them out in any way by offering, you know, that they can come down and manually take the sand and fill their own boxes on their own private roads themselves or something like that, but to use township staff, you might as well be out there cutting their front lawns and back lawns too. It's not owned by the township. We shouldn't be servicing it. Puts us in a liability position as well too. So let's try and help these folks as much as we can by giving them what we can, but at the same time being responsible to the rest of our township. Thank you.
Well, I've heard everybody, and there's been some suggestions of referring this back for more information, some suggestions of calling the vote, and I want to check with our clerk. If I call a vote on referral and it fails, can I then go back to the original vote, or we only get one go at this? Okay, so we can refer it, or we can just go straight to the vote. Is there an appetite to try the referral before we go to the vote? Okay, and Councillor Graziano, do you want the referral vote, a recorded vote, or just final if we go to it?
Just the final, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask now, I'll read it, I'll initially read it. This guy moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Graziano. Therefore, be it resolved that the provision and delivery of winter sand for use on private roads be discontinued, and that the township continue the practice providing a small quantity of sand at each public works yard available for the private use of property owners in the township of Georgian Bay. All those in favor of a referral? And that has failed miserably.
I'm a little confused.
Okay, if we vote to refer it, then we're giving it back to Mr. Sokash to come back with further information, such as, you know, any possible indemnity or what have you. If we don't vote to do that, then we're going to go to the original motion and decide yay or nay on that one. Ms. Wade, did you want to clarify?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of referral? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that has failed. So now we're going to go to the original. Sorry. Oh, is your or did you have your hand up? Okay. No. So now we're going to go to the original vote, and Ms. Way, you're have been asked to do a recorded vote, so I'm stepping aside for a moment.
Let the record show that Councillor Graziano requested a recorded vote. Councillor Graziano, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, certainly. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, whoa, better turn my mic on, sorry. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, second by Councillor Graziano. Be it resolved that the provision of be it resolved that the provision and delivery of winter sand for use on private roads be discontinued, and that the township continue the practice of providing a small quantity of sand at each public works yard available for the private use of property owners in the township of Georgian Bay. Please.
I'm pretty sure I understand, but if we vote yes, we're saying we agree with the recommendation.
If you vote yes, you're saying no more delivery of sand.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so let's do it all over again. Yes.
If we vote in favor of this resolution, we have assets that are on these roads currently in the way of the bins. Would they be collected up and brought back? Or would the associations be allowed to continue to use those bins?
Mr. Sokash.
Through the mayor, they own the bins.
They own the bins? Thank you.
Okay, so if you vote yes, you're voting to stop delivering sand. Okay. Clerk Wade, back to you.
Let the record show Council Graziano requested a recorded vote. Council Graziano, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Hazelton, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Jarvis, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Predko, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Bocek, how do you vote? Councillor Cooper, how do you vote? Mayor Kutsier, how do you vote?
Yes.
Let the record show the motion carries 5-2.
All right, thank you. Our second staff report is in regards to road sweeping. And Mr. Sokash, does that mean you want to sweep the sand that you've left behind? Oh,
This is the sand meeting. Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, the snow is melting, the roads are thawing. We have a lot of sand on the road, so we'd like to get this resolution passed. We put out a request for a tender for sweeping. We didn't have any responses. We then contacted a company, Glenn Sweeping, who does, I would say, the majority of the sweeping in Simcoe and Muskoka. They gave us a price of $130 an hour. We also contacted the contractor who performed the work last year. They gave us a price of $135 an hour. So we're recommending and asking that council award this to Glenn Sweeping as per their proposal, or I'm sorry, as per their hourly rate, up to with an upset limit of $8,000. And just to make it, just to clarify, the work that the private contractor does is just in the city centers, if you want to call it that, in downtown Majer, downtown Port Severn, and Honey Harbor. The other roads, the rural roads, we do ourselves. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Jarvis?
Just really quickly, and you did answer my question. I thought maybe we could use all that sand to fill the potholes and all the graded roads, but that's obviously you've answered that question. So the $103, how does that compare to like pre-COVID or even 2020 from standpoint of cost per hour?
Through the mayor, right in the same ballpark. Surprisingly, this hasn't gone up. The hourly rate hasn't increased much.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised. I have moved by Councillor Predko, second by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that the Operations Department be authorized to enter into a sole source contract with Glenn Sweeping at a rate of $103 per hour with an upset limit of $8,000 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. I'm going to suggest, because it's almost 11 o'clock, that we take a little break before we get into new business. So let's come back at 10 after 11, please. 11:10. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I didn't even have my speaker on. I apologize to everybody. New business, Oak Bay Fire Route signage, and Councillor Graziano.
thank you, Your Worship. Pretty straight and straightforward and explanatory. With the recent amendment of bylaw 2018-06, roads within Oak Bay are now deemed to be fire routes, offering our township the ability to ticket residents or visitors who park within those designated fire route areas. The township has stated that the costs for the new fire route signs are to be borne back onto the residents and condo corporation within Oak Bay. The concern that I have here is that the community is having to fund the costs associated with these signs, whereby the township is able to recuperate or ticket and fine those that are parking there illegally. So my recommendation is that we either cover the costs associated with the signage and the installation of the signage, or alternatively, we allow the condo community to recuperate its costs of the installation and the signs through a pay-through system, whereby any ticket issued goes right back to the condo corporation until they've been paid in full and made whole. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any staff that wishes to comment on this before I get? Chief Van Dam, please.
So just so the fire route is a provincial offense. So it's not through our parking bylaw that we would be charging that person. They'd be charged through the Ontario Fire Code. As part of the parking bylaw, we've distinguished those offenses in it for the markings. One of the, with part of the building code, is what distinguishes where a fire route needs to be, and then the code maintains it. The piece that just was designated where our counselor is talking about is mainly because a fire route needs to be connected to a public thoroughway, which is a roadway that's owned by the public. Because of the townhouses, the marine townhouses and the marina that's going in there in the building, those have to have distinguished fire routes. So now that has to be connected to a public thoroughfare, which is Golf Course Road. So as part of the Oak Bay development, I think one of the avenues is that the condo board can go through to the Oak Bay developments and ask them, because that's what has to happen. I will say that with staff, and that piece of roadway was long before my time. Staff might have, I'm going to say, been lackadaisy on designating fire routes. We've had some issues there with people, they have a parking issue in that area, and that's why it's all started to come to a head that as we investigated, we seen that we have an issue and we need to correct that issue. So that's where it all came to. The condo board, in theory, the fire chief can walk in and I would charge the condo board for having parking in a fire route. It's not, I'm gonna say the condo board has a lot of, it's not fair to them for me to charge them because they're the property owner. So that's why we make an agreement with that condo board that we will enforce it and we will take the tickets, the ticket money that comes out of that. Normally, if we walked in there, we would get the funding from charging the condo board. They're fine. So we come in there, there's a car parked in it. We could charge the condo board and then that funding would come to us. That just gives you a little bit of, I'm going to say, some of the background that goes along with it. And we'll have some more of this as that development carries on, trying to fix some of those past mistakes.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Tony, for the report. I just curious. I think what you're saying is that these roads are either owned by the condo corporation or the Oak Bay, so they're a private road essentially.
That is correct.
So we're back into the private road situation again. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Any other councillor want to comment? Councillor Jarvis.
And I'll just add on to that then. So as a private road, theoretically, the private road owner, the condo corporation, is responsible for anything that gets done on that road, including signage, correct? But you're saying that the province has dictated we've got to have the appropriate signage on this road. I just need that clarification.
It's a private road. To enforce a fire route, it has to have proper signage.
And that's a provincial mandate.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I think that should be a cost borne by the residents. Thank you.
And through your worship, just to keep it simple is with, I'm going to say the approvals that gone with that subdivision prior to, those should have been designated fire routes just for the sake of the width of the road, like what has happened on McMaster's and Links Road. It was missed at the time of them building it, and now going back to clean it up because of we have to have the existing fire route at the marine townhouses has to be connected to a public thoroughfare as per the building code.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Hazelton, please.
Don't want to belabor this a whole lot, but I'm just trying to get clarity. So it's a private road. It's a fire route. Yes. Are we as a township responsible for putting up fire route appropriate signs on all other roads?
Point of clarification, what other roads?
Well, township roads, district roads that we maintain, manage.
So if a roadway allows, a lot of it comes down to the width of the roadway. That's why it's designated as a fire route. A fire route has to be, I'm gonna just think off my head here. I believe it's 6 meters,
Okay.
right? Then, and that's because most of our roadways are wider than that. You can allow parking on municipal roadways.
So do we need to sign other roads? Or because they're wide, we don't need to sign?
Most of the municipal roads in this, in the municipality that the municipality owns do
Right.
not need to be signed.
Okay, so we're dealing with this because Oak Bay, as a developer, built roads that are too narrow and wanted the township ultimately to provide services. And so in theory, the developer should be paying for all of this stuff. Is that something you can extract from the developer?
Oh, I can't extract it. However, the condo board is having to, this condo board owns the roadway from Golf Course Road all the way past where the townhomes are. So it's their roadway, and then the town,
It's their roadway, but we are obligated to provide fire services.
that is correct.
And what control do we have for installing and maintaining the appropriate signs?
Through the Ontario Building Code, they have to provide that roadway, and then the Ontario Fire Code is what maintains that.
So the fire code maintains it, but who is under the fire code, who is responsible for funding and maintaining the signs
It's the condo board. It's their roadway.
under the fire code?
Correct, and we just enforce it. You need to have the signage.
Okay.
And it's up to them to, if they need enforcement, to contact us.
So I guess the side effect of this is, once it's properly signed, and I come back to what, if you're going to push this back onto the condo board, what powers do you have to require them to properly sign and maintain it? Do you have any powers to force them to do this?
Under the fire code, we have the authority to make them maintain the fire route,
Including signage?
including signage.
Okay. So the legislation is already in place to do all that.
That's correct. With the Ontario Building Code is what makes them put it in, and the Ontario Fire Code makes them maintain it.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I'll get back to you for the second round. I feel like here we go again on private roads thing. This fire route became an issue in part because the new marina towns were built by a developer who's going to be making money on those towns and the residents who want a fire truck to get to them if they pull the fire alarm. I mean, we talked earlier about all these folks who have private roads going into their cottages. You could argue that they're all fire routes because if somebody there's having a fire, we want the fire truck to get there. And I know in some of these private roads, you will see no parking signs. It doesn't say fire route, it says no parking because they want the road to remain open. I feel it's the same thing here. That, and if the condo board, you know, if they want somebody to pay for those signs, I think they should go after the developer who built the marina towns, who need to be accessed by the fire truck, not the township. That's my personal opinion, that this should not be a township obligation. Okay, Councillor Bochek, you didn't speak in the first round. I'll go to you before I go to Councillor Graziano.
I'm just wondering if we should, through you, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we should have staff get a legal opinion on this. We seem to be grasping at straws here and we're not really having an informed opinion on this. So perhaps we could refer this to our legal staff and just find out what our obligations are and work based on our obligations instead of wants on this one.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Worship. I beg to differ. I don't think that the two are anyway in shape or form similar. When we compare this particular matter to the sand discussion that we just had, yes, they both pertain to private roads, and I think that's to the extent that they could be deemed to be similar. However, I think they're different in very many ways, and let me just clarify. So, on the sand issue, this was something that was offered to constituents unbeknownst to us, or at least most of us, some of us knew, for whatever reason that past councils decided that they would offer this. Oak Bay, on the other hand, this wasn't given to Oak Bay at their request. District of Muskoka approved the development plans and approved the road widths. Condo Corporation had no say in that. Developers built the roads the way that the developers built the roads. Condo Corporation had no say in that. Township has now deemed them to be a fire route. Condo Corp had no say in that. Province mandates them to post these signs and are enforceable through the township. Condo Corp has no say in that. So why are we asking the Condo Corp to go back to the developer and fight a fight for monies whereby we could essentially provide them with a service? And I don't know what we're talking about. I can't imagine it's going to be all that expensive to put up a couple of signs and some posts. Rather, why aren't we taking, and by the way, I remind you that Mr. Van Dam had also said that this was a bit of our boo-boo too, that we are trying to fix. So why are we putting the onus back on the Condo Corporation? Rather, why aren't we taking the lead here and saying, look, we'll cover the costs and we'll go after Oak Bay for the costs relative to, or what's borne back onto this township. Allow us to go back to the developer rather than you having to fight this legal battle between you and developer. So just my comment, my common sense and my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cooper.
I'd like to get clarification from Chief Van Dam. I think he made it, I thought he made it pretty clear that we have every right to expect that these signs are put up, and that it is the responsibility of the condo corporation. I don't know what a lawyer is going to do for us, other than confirming what you've already told us is in provincial law and fire safety law, whatever it is called. Could you, is that not correct? What's a lawyer going to do for us? Thank you.
The legal opinion, I guess we would need more clarification of what you're actually looking for. You have a building, chief building official, where we went back to right from the word go and started to look at it. And going back to try to find history for myself, and we came back to it that this is law, that you must have this. And we chose to enforce it through the fire code because it's already there and now we need to maintain it. Maintaining it there was no fire route signs put up from the beginning, and that's what we're working towards. So as part of the legal opinion, I'm not sure what legal opinion you really want me to, what legal opinion I'm searching for.
And it's going to cost us more than the signs. With that, Councillor Hazelton.
So, Chief Van Dam, I'm delighted you made a comment about some history or memory. I would like to offer up perhaps a task item for our CAO and our planning department. A few years ago, we were dealing with some of the Oak Bay issues, and we were dealing with issues like how much parking are they providing, and what are their road widths and things like that. We collectively asked planning department to provide us with some guidance going forward on an appropriate set of legislation to cover condos, et cetera,
You're going to get to fire signs soon, aren't you?
in our township. And that sadly fell off the rails. But just like that problem has fallen off the rails and we have no memory with new staff, sounds like this is another issue. And I think that not only do we need to solve this one short term, we also need to go back and revisit the legislation covering condos in our township, which don't seem to be appropriate. They may be appropriate for Markham and
The
other
topic is
places.
fire signs.
I know, but I just wanted to wax eloquently on these other
We
things.
don't
Thank you
have
very
time.
much.
We have a full agenda. Okay, Councillor Jarvis, I believe your hand is now up for real.
For real. I presume ideally, when things were originally planned for this development, there would have been some acknowledgement that this signage would have been required at that time. Is that, I mean, we're dealing with hindsight here, so I'm not suggesting that that is the case, but logically, would that not be something that would be acknowledged at the time that the roads were being planned for that community?
So I can tell council that as part of ongoing subdivision agreements, and that the fire department now is active, working with the planning department, making our comments on some of the issues. And that's why the Marina Towns homes were designated as a fire route right from the word go, that you need to put the signage up. And even as part of construction, they had to have that signage up. And then our building department has been, when they're going out to doing building inspections and that's one of the tasks that we're making sure that that's going. So we've changed our practices. I can say that with Dave, we've had a number of conversations about fire routes and that as we look at each development, some of the other ones that are coming forward, and it's part of, I'm gonna say some of the checklists about fire route. So to correct it, that predecessors and what they did and where our people are going to be in 20 years from now, I hope we're not making the same mistake.
Just I find myself sympathetic to the cause. This is something that occurred without the current owners realizing that it needed to be done back at the outset. Would that be correct?
I can advise you that when I met with the president of the condo board and their maintenance person, they had a pretty good handle on what the costs and all of that were going to be, and there was no discussion with me about us financing it or anything like that. They were looking forward to, as we worked with them to help alleviate some of the problem. I met with them out on site. We walked the site. They came with a proposal, and under the authority of the fire code, I've approved where their signage and where they will be allowed to, I'm going to say, have a little bit of guest parking.
Okay, so basically the condo corp has acknowledged there's a responsibility on their part to do this. Thank you.
CEO Mariotti and then Councillor Predko, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kusia. Just to quickly add, and Chief Van Dam, correct me if I'm wrong. Part of the issue is parking as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, but part of that discussion was concerns about parking on the road and blocking access to the road. And obviously, as a private road, we have no jurisdiction to tow vehicles. The condo board would have to essentially engage the services of a towing company and pay for that service. So what staff did is we worked with the condo board and realized that, hang on a minute, this is a fire route. So you're mandated really, or the developer is mandated to implement signs so that we can actually go in and assist the condo board in removing vehicles that are parked on the road. Notwithstanding that, we still have to enter into an agreement with the condo board so that we are allowed to go on their private road to tow the vehicles away. So it's pretty, it's fairly involved. However, at the end of the day, it's still a private road, and I know it's tough to kind of visualize that when it's a nice development, and you have Golf Course Road, Masters Crescent, Links Trail, which is municipally owned, but this is private, no different than a private road going down to your cottage.
Point of clarity, Your Worship, if I can. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to address Mr. Van Dam in his comments, and I was hoping to do so because I just received a message from the Oak Bay president.
I'm going to let Councillor Predko go first, and then we'll let you make some comment afterwards.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments. So I've sat on a condo board in the past, and I know the obligations of the condo board are to abide by and uphold the bylaws and the laws in the areas in which it operates. And this doesn't mean that if it's an oversight that should have been done earlier or not. I think what the Oak Bay Condo Board probably realizes is that this is the legislation that's before them in the bylaws, and that it's their obligation to comply. What I would just be wary of is us making an accommodation or an exception in this case, because in the future that we might be back here talking again about making exceptions for other bylaw changes that we made, because the perception may be that it wasn't because they asked for it. It's just that it's the changing nature of bylaws. I'm not sure I understand exactly why, given it's a condo board on their private property, and its compliance with bylaw and legislation, that we are making an exception at this time.
Councillor Graziano, you had some additional information?
Yes, the president of the Woodlands Association, specifically the area that is affected by this cost, has confirmed that what Chief Van Dam had stated was incorrect. They did not accept the costs associated with what is required. I think to Mr. Predko's comments, they acknowledge the fact that the legislation requires this to occur, but they did not in any way, shape, or form say that they would assume the costs associated with this. Thank you.
You know, we have spent a good chunk of time talking about this topic, and the time we have spent, probably the staff salaries would have paid for one or two of these signs. Like, I think it's unbelievable sometimes how much time we can spend on relatively small issues. Having said that, we have to resolve this one way or another. I personally think, quite frankly, if the condo unit had a parking issue, and one of the ways to resolve the parking issue was to declare this a fire route, and therefore people aren't allowed to park. In one sense, you know, we're doing them a favor and preventing them from having to tow cars or write nasty notes on their windshields. They're leaving the dirty work to us. And so I have difficulty with this one. I personally think what they should be doing, frankly, is going after the developer who's put in the marina towns, which means the traffic flow is going to increase, which means the parking is going to become more sensitive, hence the need for the declaration of fire route. So I think personally, I think it should be on the folks there, whether it's the condo or corporation Woodlands, or that they pursue the developer as opposed to us. But having said that, I don't think we should do that much more lengthy debate, because again, what are we talking, Brad, to put up a sign on a road? I don't know, with all the labor involved, $500. I mean, the sign itself is going to be $100 if you order them in bulk.
To the mayor's ballpark, $500 to $1,000.
Thank you. Councilor Cooper.
I realize that it's only $500, but we're setting a precedent, and it is a private road. And I think we need to remember that if we do it here, we'll do it everywhere. So.
All right. I'm going to read the motion. Moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Whereas the Township of Georgian Bay has passed an amendment to parking bylaw 2018-06, in which Oak Bay highways were designated as fire routes. And whereas the Township of Georgian Bay has the authority to issue parking tickets within Oak Bay's designated fire routes and collect the prescribed amounts in fines. And whereas the Township of Georgian Bay has currently downloaded the cost of new fire route signs back onto the residents and condo corporations within Oak Bay. Now therefore be it resolved, the Township of Georgian Bay cover the cost for new fire route signage within Oak Bay, and that the Township of Georgian Bay also cover all additional costs associated with installation of new fire route signage within Oak Bay. I'm not sure I understand the second one. But anyway, we're covering the signs one way and another way, I think. Having said that, that's the motion in front of me, and I'm now going to call the vote. All those in favor? 1. And that is defeated. Okay. Next in front of us is Highway 400 off-ramp signage. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps this private road discussion continues on Highway 400, as we don't own the highway off-ramps or the signages on those roads. So I'm going to be interested to see what council says here today. With that being said, of course, we know northbound 400 between Whites Falls all the way up to South Gibson Lake Road, the signs on clear days and evenings are not visible. And that, and of course, with inclement weather, even worse at that. It's been some time that these have been faded. I understand through Mr. Sokash now that the ministry is aware of this and that they have signs created for these specific sections of northbound 400. However, I'd like to ensure that they are changed with the rain season upon us. Last night, I had a hard time seeing them. This morning, I had a hard time seeing them. So again, I'd like to make sure that we can actually get these signs posted and up. I understand that we have no control over that, but I'd like to make sure that staff, if they can, follow up with the MTO on times and and when they'll be getting them up. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Sokash, do you want to make any additional comment before I turn it over to council? No. Councillor Cooper, please.
This isn't a private road, it's a public road, so I would certainly be more than willing to support this and to have the burners turned up on the provincial government to fix the signage. I think it makes a lot of sense and encourage that we do put the heat on. Thank you.
I find myself with a little bit concerned with this because the first portion of the first therefore is that direct staff to contact the ministry requesting signs be replaced prior to spring rainy season. My understanding is staff has contacted the ministry in regard to these signs already. And therefore we're telling staff to do something they've already done. And then asking staff to update council upon receiving response from the ministry or at the latest in the next month's council meeting, May council meeting. Again, I know from dealing with the province and certainly when we're hearing from Mr. Sokash, she may or may not get an update from them, but the only update that actually counts is when they replace the sign. And, while we can certainly write to the ministry and try to say we support that, asking staff to go after the ministry on a regular basis, I'm not sure this is serving much purpose to us. That's my only concern with this is that, and by the way, I agree, those signs are horrible. Any further comment before I call the vote? Councillor Jarvis, will go to you. And then we'll.
Quickly, just as a follow-up to the mayor's just comments there, Mr. Sokash, when was the last contact with the ministry with regards to these? If you don't mind me asking. Well, whether you mind me or not.
Through the mayor, it was appears to have been March 20th.
So relatively recently. My only other comment is I thought we went from winter to construction season, not rainy season, but that's neither here nor there. I think in the context of what the mayor has said, I think this is being dealt with already. I don't know that we need to deal with it again. I don't know if we can rush them in any way, shape or form. Maybe we'll slow them down by being so persistent. I don't know. Thanks.
Councillor Cooper.
I support this. B, really just about picking up the phone, turning up the heat.
Councillor Graziano.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Cooper over there with respect to simply just following up and making sure that we stay on top of this to have those signs changed. I think, given the summer months and with those that are not only going to be coming up to the cottages, but also those that are going to be coming to our township to visit, it makes sense that our township looks as best as it possibly can. And I think those signs are eyesores, and the fact that we agree that they are awful. However, some of the comments here today are they're awful, but let's not do anything about it because it seems that we've already contacted them. I'd like to see us try to at least emphasize to the MTO that we need to have those signs changed. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Graziano, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Whereas the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario is responsible for managing the provincial highway corridor network, including Highway 400. And whereas the off-ramp signs at White Falls Road, Crooked Bay Road, and South Gibson Lake Road are heavily faded. And whereas the lack of visibility to highway off-ramp signs may create a hazard to motorists in less than optimal conditions. Now therefore be it resolved, the Township of Georgian Bay be directed staff contact the Ministry of Transportation requesting signs be pre-placed prior to the spring rainy season, and that council direct staff to provide an update to council upon receiving a response from the Ministry of Transport or at the latest within May 2023's council meeting. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, and that is carried. All right. Councillor Predko, sustainability facilities, naming rights, advertising, and park memorials.
Thank you, your worship. So this motion is to request a staff report on a policy for naming rights for our facilities. So that could be for both monetary and non-monetary purposes. But we do have some facilities like the pickleball court that's being RFP'd and tendered for the Honey Harbor area. We've got the Baxter Community Center, we've got the Memorial Arena. All of these have a particular connection to the community, and there may be opportunities for an organization to sponsor those facilities with a monetary amount that we could use for a specific refund for maintenance of that facility or for general reserve, for helping us offset other costs in maintenance in the future. When I've looked at other municipalities and how they've dealt with this, they've also had a holistic approach at looking at other partnerships. So that might be advertising and how we can look at other forms of advertising and other funds that might be a non-tax based addition to our revenues. And as well, I noted that we have a memorialization policy, but perhaps it's time to review that again as a collective whole. Really, this is looking at other non-tax revenue sources that we can use to maintain our facilities and keep our township beautiful.
Fully support it. I think it's a great idea. And I would like to offer that in Honey Harbor, we have a community center where we have had a similar naming and recognition process, even to the point where we sell docks. We don't sell the dock, we just put a name on the dock and generate funds from that for the community center. And so it's a very successful program in our community for a community center. And I think it should be expanded as Councillor Predko has suggested. Thank you.
And for clarification, you're not talking about, you're talking about a private community center, not a public one.
In our
Yeah,
case, it's
yes,
private, but
yeah, no, I just didn't want any confusion from the audience. Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do agree that I think perhaps it's worthwhile looking into and seeing what staff can come up with. I do have some strong concerns though with regards to what's being requested here. In that, where do we end? Sorry. Where do we end with respect to advertising? Can we advertise at a public? No worries, technical difficulties. Going back to what I was saying, where does the advertising end? I mean, if I want to advertise at our public boat launch, is that going to be available to my constituents as well? Or do they require a marina in order to advertise? Are we going to see billboards on municipal lands because we want to advertise certain things? So I want to make sure that that staff, keeps this very, very, very focused and to specific areas that would warrant such advertising. Again, the arena boards, great. If we can try to recuperate some costs and or bring our deficit down, our operating costs down on the marina, understandable. But outside of that, I think that we should be very cautious in how we tread. Thank you.
Councillor Wojcik.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the resolution in front of us, but I would like to have both a honorary value put to naming of a building and also honorary too. There may be points in time where the naming of a facility or a park is not meant for financial gain, but for history and recognition. So yeah. I would like both sides of this, both a monetary naming and an honorary naming, to be a part of this if possible.
Thank you. Okay, I have moved by Councillor Predko, second by Councillor Wojcik. Be it resolved that staff provide a report and proposed bylaws to provide the township with options and guidelines for defining and selling naming rights for a facility, meeting room, or other resource, advertising, and memorial items. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Sorry? I heard somebody. Okay. Big Shoot public boat launch.